Welcome back. Today we're going to be conquering probably the most difficult challenge for couples coming into my office, and that's fighting. And usually when we fight, it's over something that we're pretty frustrated about or we're angry about. And why are we frustrated? Why are we angry? We're angry because our partner is usually not seeing it our way. There's a great poet by the name of Rumi. He has a poem says, "Out beyond rightness and wrongness, there is a field. I'll meet you there." This concept of going beyond one partner being right and one person being wrong, that's where we want to go to. Because as we've learned in the dialogue with the validation, that there is room for two completely different perspectives. There needs to be room for completely different perspectives. As you can see from the slides that I'm showing you, you can be seeing the same exact thing, but seeing it very different ways. So we want to be able to understand that. One of the things that happens is we begin to state opinions as if they're facts. And I see this a lot. Most things that we state are opinions. And they're not facts, but we state them as if they are. So that's one of the things we want to become more self-aware of. I like it when people start a sentence with, "in my opinion," blah, 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 blah. Because it gives that space, that room, to know that there may be another opinion. This is just my opinion. So that's really going to go a long way to allowing you to have more peaceful differences of opinions. So that's one very important component of this. So I think a frustration, let's just define what we're talking about, a frustration or a conflict. A frustration is the discrepancy between what you want and what you're getting. Think about it, the discrepancy between the way it is and the way you wish it were. And that's causing you conflict. What is, and what's your belief about how it should be? So those types of beliefs are setting up frustration and conflict in your relationship. What we eventually come to understand is it's really not your partner's differences that matter, it's your objections to these differences. It says to your partner, it's not okay for you to be you. It's a very important distinction. It's not that your partner is different or feels different. It's that you object to those differences that creates the conflict. It's your inability to tolerate and accept your partner's differences that frustrates you and will create an argument. Basically, to use Byron Katie's terms, we're resisting what is. We're resisting what is. We're pushing against what is. We may object to the differences of our partner for a number of reasons. First of all and foremost, our ego gets in the way. And when our ego gets in the way, distrust comes up, fear comes up, we may feel rejected, we may feel disrespected, we might even feel betrayed because our partner is disagreeing with us. We then begin to tell ourselves a story. Our mind begins to conjure up a story about what is actually going on. Maybe we feel our partner she doesn't understand what I'm talking about. What is her problem? We start to conjure up, she doesn't respect me. And there the conflict begins to rise. Typically we feel threatened or unsafe. What's happening is the part of our brain, the oldest part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain is being triggered. And that's our fight and flight. It's where we either want to be right or wrong. And I'll tell you what, if you're going to get into who's right and who's wrong, you may end up winning who's right, but you're going to end up losing in the long run because that never works. So, how do we get out of this vicious cycle? It's very important, first of all, instead of trying to push your point with the argument and becoming angry and defensive, try approaching your partner's differences with wonder, with curiosity, with interest, with respect. Harville Hendricks has a beautiful expression that I think is helpful in this regard. He says, conflict is growth waiting to happen. Let me say that again, it's important. Conflict is growth waiting to happen. Within every conflict that you have, if you're willing to go a little deeper beyond the surface and look into yourself, what's coming up for you? There's a real opportunity here for growth, because what I will tell you is that almost every conflict, every frustration has to do with an unmet need. Something in you that's not being met. And typically, if the argument is occurring over and over and over again, the same theme, it has to do with a wound from childhood. Because we've all been wounded in childhood, no matter how great your parents were. We've all come out, nobody has come out unscathed. And one of the beauties of our partner is that they are there to help trigger those things that we need to grow. They are the perfect partner for us to heal our childhood wounds. So when conflict arises, what we need to do is look at those unmet needs. What needs are not being met in us? What's getting triggered for us? And begin to identify those. And you can see what happens when we don't do that. Just look at the debates that are going on right now. There's absolutely no respect for the differences and opinions that are going on between the different candidates. And you see how they're manifesting such conflict. So what do we do? What do we do when we're in the middle of a cycle where we're arguing, we're fighting? How do we get out of that? That's a very difficult process. It's much better not to get into it in the first place, I'll tell you. And the way to not get into it in the first place is to ask your partner for a dialogue, as we talked to in the very first beginning session. You would say to your partner, I'd like to have a dialogue, is now a good time? And if you learn the techniques of mirroring, validating, empathizing, summarizing, you are going to have a relationship that has the ability to be vulnerable. Because when we're arguing, we need to feel like we can be vulnerable. We need to feel like we can really say what's on our mind and what we're feeling and experiencing. And that's usually pushing our partner's buttons, and that's why we're arguing. So what we have to do for each other is understand that we need to do everything in our power to not become reactive. And I know that's a tall order for a lot of people, because reactivity is part of that flight and fight response. But we don't have to be living in our reptilian brain. We have the ability to step back, to take a breath, and to say, you know what? I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be curious. I want to know what my partner, why she's in so much pain, or why he's in so much pain. What is this suffering about? And we want to be there to really listen. And the dialogue, the intentional dialogue, is an incredible opportunity to be able to do that. But we have to take it a step further, because as I said, when you're having frustration, or deep frustration, it's usually about an unmet need. So we have to be able to tell our partner what that unmet need is. What is it I need from you that I'm not getting? And to do that, A, we have to be vulnerable, and B, our partner has to be able to hear that without becoming defensive and angry. And that's where this frustration dialogue comes in. That's where you're able to just say, okay, I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to mirror. I'm just going to validate. But you must keep in mind that oftentimes what's getting triggered in me is a childhood wound, something that goes back very deep. So if, for example, you missed an appointment, we had a date and you came late, and that happens on a fairly regular basis, and my reaction is to become very, very upset rather than work it out with you and find out why you're late all the time, and maybe adjust me to understanding you're always going to be giving you a window, let's say, of 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe I was told when I was young, you better be there exactly on time, all the time, okay, because that's respectful. And that's what's getting played, so I'm being disrespected. So my unmet need is that I'm feeling disrespected and I want to be respected. But we need to communicate that so our partner understands this isn't all about them. As a matter of fact, the things you argue about, probably 90% of what you argue about has nothing to do with your partner and everything to do with you. Maybe 10% has to do with your partner. So we want to own that. But how can we own that? We have to share that. You know, when you are late all the time, it really triggers me. It makes me remember, you know, how I feel that, you know, when I grew up, it was disrespectful if you didn't show up on time. So I feel disrespected. That's going to be a very different conversation than what the hell's the matter with you being late all the time? So we've got to understand. We've got to be in tune with each other. And that's another thing in fighting. We've got to be in tune with each other, sensitive to each other. And remember, as the Dalai Lama says, the most important thing, in his opinion, in relationship is kindness. We want to be kind to each other. There is no place for yelling, raising your voice, criticizing, blaming, or shaming. Those are the three evils, if you will, of a relationship: shaming, blaming, and criticizing. Eliminate those from your relationship. And in summary, learn how to accept what is. Be with reality. However your partner is showing up, that is what is, and work with that. And it will go a long way towards helping you resolve all of your conflicts and frustrations. Thank you.